All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're going deep, folks, into the history of pro-Zionist lobbying. And we've got a fascinating guide, Ilan Pappe, Lobbying for Zionism on Both Sides of the Atlantic. This isn't just some dry historical account, though. Think lavish dinners, secret meetings, the whole shebang.
Oh, absolutely. It's a wild ride, and it all starts in a place you might not expect at all.
Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Where are we starting?
The luxurious new London headquarters of the British and Foreign Bible Society. Back in 1866, this wasn't just some Avi outfit handing out pamphlets.
Wait, the Bible Society?
Yeah.
As in the people who print Bibles? What's that got to do with lobbying for a Jewish state?
You'd be surprised. Pappe paints this picture of them, right? Hosting these extravagant gatherings, serving turtle soup shipped all the way from New York. They were rubbing elbows with royalty, flush with cash, and they were dead set on using it to get their way.
So these fancy dinners, this was all part of some calculated strategy.
In a way, yeah. This is where early Christian Zionists began advocating for a Jewish state in Palestine. Saw it as their duty, you know? Divine mission, even.
Hold on, so even way back then, they were already playing the influence game. I always thought of Zionism as more of a political movement, though. Where does religion fit into all this?
It's important to remember. Before it was a political force, Zionism was deeply rooted in theology. Specifically, this concept called millenarian activism.
Millenarian activism. Sounds a bit intense. What's that all about?
Imagine believing you could actually help bring about the Second Coming. That's basically it. For these Christian Zionists, supporting a Jewish return to Palestine wasn't just charity. It was fulfilling biblical prophecy, a key to God's plan. High stakes, right?
Talk about pressure. It wasn't just about winning votes. It was about fulfilling biblical prophecy. I can't imagine modern-day lobbyists working with that kind of weight on their shoulders.
Exactly. This fervor, this belief that they were playing a role in God's plan, it absolutely fueled their determination. The Bible Society, they were just one example of this activism gaining traction. A sign of things to come, you could say.
So they were laying the groundwork even if they weren't directly lobbying politicians yet. But how did this early, religiously motivated movement transform into the politically savvy force we know today? That's quite a leap.
That's where things get really interesting. Enter Theodore Herzl, a man with a vision, a knack for networking, and a date with destiny in a very swanky London hotel.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Let's talk about Herzl and his adventures in London.
So picture this, it's the late 19th century, and Theodore Herzl, this charismatic journalist, the visionary behind modern political Zionism, arrives in London. He's on a mission to drum up support for a Jewish state, sets his sights on the movers and shakers, hoping to win over the European elites.
That's a tall order, convincing powerful people to back a radical new idea. I imagine he faced some resistance.
Oh, absolutely. Herzl quickly realized that Europe's elite, they weren't exactly lining up to support a Jewish state. He even tried to strike a deal with Lord Rothschild, can you believe it? Offered to step aside as the leader of the Zionist movement if Rothschild would back the cause. Talk about dedication.
Wow, that's putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
So what happened? Did Rothschild agree?
Not even close, unfortunately. Even that bold move didn't pan out the way Herzl hoped.
So Europe was a bust. What made him turn his attention to Britain then?
Opportunity, my friend. Remember, this is a time of great power rivalry and control over the Middle East. That was a key objective for many nations.
Ah, right, because of its strategic importance. The crossroads of the world and all that.
Exactly. And Britain, with its vast empire and interests in the region, well, they were particularly keen on maintaining their influence there.
I see where you're going with this. Britain's support for a Jewish state, it wasn't purely altruistic, was it? There were strategic interests at play as well.
Bingo! Pappe doesn't shy away from that at all. He points out that the British saw a potential Jewish state as a valuable ally in the region, a buffer against growing French and Russian influence.
So securing their own interests in the region, that played a significant role in their decision-making.
It did, but it wasn't the whole story. We also have to factor in the Suez Canal.
Right, the Suez Canal, a vital trade route for the British Empire, of course. So control over that region was paramount for them.
Precisely. Protecting their access to the Suez Canal weighed heavily on their minds.
It makes you wonder how much of their support was genuine sympathy for the Zionist cause versus, cold, hard political strategy. It was probably a bit of both.
A bit of both, absolutely. A complex web of motivations, as Pappe so expertly unravels. And we can't forget about Chaim Weizmann, a key figure in this story.
Weizmann, right. A brilliant scientist, wasn't he? And a skilled diplomat, too. I remember reading about him.
That he was. But even more importantly, Weissman. He understood the British mindset. He knew how to appeal to their sense of idealism while also addressing their strategic concerns.
Sounds like a master strategist himself.
Yeah.
So how did he manage to win them over? What was his approach?
Weissman was clever. He framed Zionist settlements in Palestine as fulfilling both socialist and nationalist ideals, which made them more palatable to the British public at the time.
Interesting. So he tailored his message to resonate with the prevailing political ideologies of the time.
Exactly. He argued that these settlements, they weren't just about providing refuge for persecuted Jews. They were about creating a modern, self-sufficient society that aligned with progressive values. It was a brilliant strategy that helped shift public opinion and garner crucial support for a Jewish state.
So by framing Zionist settlements in this way, Weissman essentially created a narrative that resonated with both the British public and their government, paving the way for a landmark moment, the Balfour Declaration.
The Balfour Declaration, a turning point, no doubt, a major victory for the Zionist movement. But as we'll see, the path to actually establishing a Jewish state, well, that was far from over. New challenges were on the horizon.
The Balfour Declaration, a turning point for sure.
Yeah.
But then came World War II and the Holocaust. Talk about a game changer, right?
Absolutely. The Holocaust was a horrific tragedy, and it had a profound impact on the Zionist cause. Suddenly, the idea of a Jewish state, it wasn't just an abstract political goal anymore. It became a matter of urgent humanitarian need. The world was grappling with the horrors of genocide, and the Zionist movement was able to tap into that sentiment.
Right, the need for a safe haven for Jewish people became undeniably clear. But it wasn't just about tapping into emotions, was it? The world was also changing rapidly in terms of international relations.
Exactly. This is the era of decolonization, right? Former colonies across Asia and Africa were fighting for their independence, throwing off the shackles of colonial rule. The old colonial language, it just didn't fly anymore. So how did the pro-Zionist lobby navigate this shift? How did they adapt their message for a world that was increasingly sympathetic to anti-colonial struggles?
They were clever, I'll give them that. They knew they couldn't rely on the old rhetoric of colonialism, so they reframed their message. They started drawing parallels between the Zionist movement and other national liberation movements of the time, framing the creation of Israel as an act of decolonization, of self-determination for the Jewish people.
That's fascinating. So they were basically aligning themselves with this global wave of anti-colonial sentiment, positioning Israel as a nation rising from the ashes of oppression, just like many others at the time.
Exactly. And it worked. This strategy was particularly effective in garnering support from newly independent nations who had just thrown off the yoke of colonialism themselves. They could relate to the Zionist struggle in a way that they couldn't before. It's amazing how they were able to adapt their message so effectively to resonate with the changing times. But it wasn't just about winning arguments in diplomatic circles, right? They also understood the power of culture, of shaping hearts and minds. Pappe talks about this fascinating campaign that unfolded in the US, particularly in Hollywood.
Oh, absolutely. Hollywood played a significant role in shaping public opinion, and one of the most striking examples of this is the 1945 musical We Will Never Die.
We Will Never Die. Tell me more about that.
On the surface, it was a memorial to Holocaust victims, a powerful tribute to those who had perished. But it also cleverly wove in this narrative of Jewish resilience, the need for a homeland where Jewish people could be safe and secure.
So it wasn't just about mourning the past, it was about advocating for a very specific future.
Precisely. And it had a massive impact. We Will Never Die played to packed audiences across the United States, evoking strong emotions and indirectly bolstering support for a Jewish state. It was a brilliant example of using art and storytelling to influence public opinion.
It seems like they really understood the power of narrative, of connecting with people on a deeper emotional level. And this understanding, it becomes even more pronounced with the rise of AIPAC, which emerges as a political powerhouse in the American landscape.
AIPAC, without a doubt, became a major force in shaping U.S. policy towards Israel. They were meticulous in cultivating relationships with politicians, employed sophisticated fundraising tactics, and mastered the art of media manipulation. They knew how to play the game in Washington.
And they weren't afraid to use their influence. Pappe highlights the 1973 Yom Kippur War as a pivotal moment when those advocating for a more balanced approach, one that recognized Palestinian rights, faced the full force of AIPAC's opposition.
The Yom Kippur War was a turning point. Even within the U.S. government, where pro-Israel sentiment was already strong, some officials dared to suggest that perhaps a more even-handed approach was needed. one that acknowledged the legitimate concerns of both sides.
And how did AIPAC respond to this challenge to their narrative?
They went on the offensive, portraying any criticism of Israel, even calls for a more balanced approach, as inherently anti-Israel, even anti-Semitic. It was a way to shut down debate and silence opposing viewpoints.
A powerful tactic, to be sure. So they wielded their influence effectively. But did they always get what they wanted? Were there ever times when American presidents prioritized U.S. interests over Israeli demands?
AIPAC was influential, undeniably so, but they weren't all-powerful. There were times when American presidents, even under intense pressure, charted their own course. Presidents like Eisenhower and Carter come to mind. They recognized that U.S. interests in the Middle East were complex and couldn't be dictated solely by the demands of another nation, even a close ally.
So a more nuanced picture emerges. It wasn't just a simple case of one country blindly following the lead of another. But even with these occasional challenges, the pro-Zionist lobby never lost sight of the importance of shaping the narrative, of controlling how the world viewed Israel and its actions.
Absolutely. And as we move into the 21st century, this desire to control the narrative, it takes on a new form with the rise of what Pappe calls Brand Israel.
Brand Israel, what's that all about?
Well, faced with mounting international criticism, particularly over its treatment of the Palestinians, Israel embarked on a concerted effort to rebrand itself on the world stage. Think of it as a carefully curated PR campaign.
So instead of just focusing on political lobbying, they took a page from the playbook of corporations trying to manage their global image.
Exactly. They invested heavily in promoting Israel's positive attributes, its technological innovation, its vibrant arts and culture scene, all while downplaying the ongoing conflict with the Palestinians.
A strategic pivot, for sure.
Yeah.
But did it work? Did this Brand Israel campaign actually manage to shift global perceptions?
It's hard to say for sure. On the one hand, it did have some successes. It helped to shift the conversation away from the conflict and highlight some of Israel's genuine achievements. But on the other hand, it felt, to many, like a superficial attempt to gloss over the more challenging aspects of Israel's reality.
So a mixed bag then. It seems that the pro-Zionist lobby's long quest to shape the narrative has entered a new and perhaps more challenging phase in the 21st century, a world of instant communication and ever-evolving media landscapes. It makes you wonder, has this relentless pursuit of influence, this determination to control how the world views Israel, ultimately helped or hindered the pursuit of peace and understanding in the region? It's a question that continues to spark debate and demands careful consideration from all sides.